May 19th, 1845. Two ships leave England with 129 men aboard. They're stocked with enough food to last 3 years. Canned goods, salted meat, flour, and thousands of pounds of supplies. They've got the best technology of the era: steam engines, iron-reinforced hulls, heated cabins. This isn't some ragtag group of adventurers. These are experienced sailors, led by one of the most respected explorers in the British Royal Navy. Their mission? Find the Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It's the ultimate prize. Whoever finds it will go down in history. The ships are named HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, and they're commanded by Sir John Franklin, a man who's already survived 2 Arctic expeditions. They set out with supplies for years, then vanished. No distress signals, no messages home, nothing. For over a decade, search parties scoured the Arctic. They found abandoned camps, scattered supplies, a few frozen bodies, and then they found something that changed everything. The evidence was so disturbing that it shocked the world and tarnished Franklin's legacy forever. So what happened to the Franklin expedition? How did 129 men disappear into the Arctic ice? And what dark secrets did the frozen wasteland reveal? Today, we read diving into one of history's most tragic and mysterious disasters, an expedition that had everything going for it, until it didn't. Let's get into it. To understand why this expedition was such a big deal, you need to understand the obsession with the Northwest Passage. For centuries, Europe searched for an Arctic shortcut to Asia. Sailing around South America or Africa took forever dangerous, slow, expensive. The Arctic route would cut travel time in half and change global trade. It was the space race of the 1800s, and Britain was determined to win. By 1845, most of the Canadian Arctic had been mapped. But there was still a gap, a blank spot on the map where no one had sailed, and that's where Franklin came in. Sir John Franklin, 59, was old for Arctic travel, but had survived starvation, frostbite, and even cannibalism on previous expeditions. His reputation was earned. So when the British Admiralty put him in charge of this mission, it made sense. They gave him 2 ships, the Erebus and the Terror, both of which had already proven themselves in Antarctic waters. These weren't flimsy wooden boats. They were state-of-the-art vessels, reinforced with iron plating to withstand crushing ice. They had steam engines that could power through frozen seas. They even had libraries, china plates, and silverware. This was luxury Arctic exploration, and the crew, 129 hand-picked men. Officers, sailors, engineers, a surgeon, even an ice master, an expert in navigating through ice fields. On paper, this expedition was unstoppable. The plan was simple: sail west through Lancaster Sound, navigate through the Arctic archipelago, and emerge in the Pacific. Easy, right? On May 19, 1845, the 2 ships left England. Crowds gathered to wave goodbye. Families hugged their loved ones. Everyone was optimistic. This was going to be historic. And for a while, everything went according to plan. In July 1845, a whaling ship spotted the Erebus and Terror in Baffin Bay off the coast of Greenland. The crew seemed in good spirits. They were healthy, supplies were intact, morale was high. The captain of the whaling ship even went aboard and shared a meal with Franklin. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. After that, silence. At first, no one was worried. Arctic expeditions often took years. Communication was impossible once you entered the ice. So the Admiralty waited. Franklin's wife, Lady Jane Franklin, waited. The families waited. 1 year passed. Then 2. Then 3. By 1848, people started to worry. Franklin's supplies should have run out by now. Where were they? The British government launched the first search mission in 1848, then another, and another. Over the next decade, more than 30 expeditions were sent to find Franklin and his men. It became the largest rescue operation in history. And slowly, over the years, searchers began finding clues. In 1850, they found 3 graves on Beechey Island, 3 crew members who died early in the expedition. But there was no sign of the ships or the other 126 men. In 1854, a Scottish explorer named John Rae was traveling through the Arctic when he met a group of Inuit hunters, and they told him something chilling. They'd seen white men a few years earlier starving, desperate, dragging a boat across the ice. The men looked like walking skeletons. Some were already dead, and the Inuit found abandoned campsites littered with bones, human bones, bones that had been cracked open, bones with knife marks, bones that had been boiled. Ray brought back some of the artifacts the Inuit had found: silverware with Franklin's initials, naval buttons, scraps of clothing. And when he reported what the Inuit had told him, Britain erupted in outrage. Cannibalism? Impossible. Not British sailors. Not men of the Royal Navy. The public refused to believe it. Lady Franklin called Ray a liar. Charles Dickens, the famous author, wrote articles defending Franklin's honor, claiming the Inuit were making it up. But Ray wasn't lying. And over the years, more evidence would prove him right. So what happened? How did the best-equipped Arctic expedition in history end in disaster? Well, it started with bad luck. And then it got worse, a lot worse. After leaving Baffin Bay in 1845, Franklin's ships sailed west through Lancaster Sound, just as planned. But by September, they hit ice. Thick, unbreakable ice. The kind that locks ships in place for months. Now, getting stuck in ice wasn't unusual. Arctic explorers expected it. You just wait until spring when the ice melted and then keep going. But Franklin's ships didn't get unstuck in the spring. They stayed frozen. All through 1846, all through 1847. For 2 full years, the Erebus and Terror sat trapped in the ice near King William Island. And that's when things started falling apart. Problem 1. The food was poisoned. Remember those thousands of cans of food they brought? Turns out they were contaminated. In the 1840s, canned food was a new technology, and the company that supplied Franklin's expedition did a sloppy job. The cans were sealed with lead solder, and that leads to leaching into the food. Over time, the crew started showing signs of lead poisoning, confusion, weakness, aggression, paranoia. Their bodies were slowly shutting down, but they didn't know that. They just thought they were getting sick from the cold. Problem 2. Scurvy lead poisoning wasn't the only problem. The crew also started suffering from scurvy, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin C. Your gums bleed, your teeth fall out, your skin bruises, old wounds reopen. Eventually, you die. Scurvy was a well-known problem on long sea voyages. But Franklin's crew thought they were protected because they had lemon juice. Except that the lemon juice they brought had been processed in a way that destroyed all the vitamin C, so it was basically useless. Problem 3. Starvation. By 1848, they'd been stuck for almost 3 years. Supplies were running out. The crew was starving, sick, and desperate. And then Franklin died. We don't know exactly when or how, but evidence suggests he passed away in June 1847. His death left the crew without their leader, without hope, and without a plan. So they made a decision. They abandoned the ships and tried to walk south, dragging lifeboats across the ice, hoping to reach a Hudson's Bay Company outpost hundreds of miles away. It was a death march. The men who tried to escape didn't make it far. They collapsed, one by one, on the frozen tundra. Their bodies were scattered across King William Island, along with the supplies they'd tried to carry: boats, silverware, books, even a cooking stove. Why were they dragging a stove across the Arctic? Because they were delirious, starving, and not thinking straight. And then came the part no one wanted to talk about. What bones did John Ray's Inuit contacts find? They weren't just scattered. They were butchered. Cut marks on arm bones. Skulls are cracked open to access the brain. Leg bones are split to extract marrow. The crew of the Franklin expedition had resorted to cannibalism. For years people denied it. But in the 1980s, forensic scientists analyzed the bones and confirmed it. The knife marks were deliberate. The bones had been processed for food. It's horrifying, but it's also understandable. These men were starving to death in one of the harshest environments on Earth. They did what they had to do to survive. And in the end, it wasn't enough. Not a single member of the Franklin expedition made it home. For over 150 years, the wrecks of the Erebus and Terror remained lost beneath the Arctic ice. But in 2014, Canadian researchers found the Erebus sitting on the ocean floor in pristine condition. 2 years later, they found the Terror. Both ships were remarkably well preserved. The cold water had kept them intact. Divers explored the wrecks and found dishes still on tables, boots still in cabins, and even a bottle of wine unopened. It was like stepping into a time capsule. And while the wrecks didn't solve every mystery, they did confirm one thing. Franklin's crew hadn't made any catastrophic navigational errors. They'd followed the plan. They'd done everything right. They just got unlucky. The ice was thicker than expected. The food was poisoned. And the Arctic, well, the Arctic doesn't forgive mistakes. So here's the thing about the Franklin expedition. It wasn't a failure because the crew was incompetent. It was a failure because nature is unpredictable. Because even the best preparation can't account for every variable. 129 men set out to make history, and in a way, they did. Just not the way they'd hoped. Their story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, about the limits of technology, and about the brutal, unforgiving power of the Arctic. But it's also a story about human endurance. These men survived for years in one of the most hostile places on Earth. They didn't give up. They kept trying, kept pushing, even when all hope was gone. And maybe that's the real legacy of the Franklin expedition. Not the tragedy, but the resilience. So what do you think? Could they have survived if they'd made different choices? Or was this doomed from the start? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's greatest mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's plenty more where this came from. Thanks for watching. Stay curious. And I'll see you in the next one.